Mistress dressed up elegantly and asked her millionaire for a night, shocked when his ex-wife arrived. From the outside, James Caldwell's life appeared perfect. A stunning home, a beautiful wife named Catherine, and the career of his dreams. Yet behind the polished doors of domestic bliss simmered a hidden truth, a secret so fragile it could shatter everything. One evening, that secret took shape in a single text message, beckoning him to a secluded restaurant. The sender? His mysterious mistress, Lucy Cromwell, vowing a night that would change the course of his life. But when James arrived, ready to indulge in the illicit, his world tilted on its axis. Waiting in Lucy's place was his wife, Catherine. James Caldwell was the kind of man who turned heads the moment he walked into a room. Tall, broad-shouldered, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits, he exuded the self-assured demeanor of someone who knew his place in the world. He was a successful marketing executive at Burbank and Langley, a reputable firm in downtown Chicago. His annual salary was solid, and he carried himself as though nothing in the world could ever go wrong. He was married to Catherine Monroe Caldwell, an elegant, intelligent woman whose dedication to her philanthropic endeavors turned heads just as readily. Catherine was the daughter of one of Chicago's old money families, the Monroe lineage, famed for their generational wealth and philanthropic spirit. If James was polished, Catherine was positively luminous, a powerful beauty in her sharp intellect and confident stride. Their wedding had been the talk of the town a decade prior, complete with a breathtaking ceremony at the historic Adler Planetarium, followed by a reception that seemed to glitter beneath the city skyline. As months turned to years, friends envied their synchronicity. Catherine was as comfortable organizing a fundraiser for underprivileged schools as she was laughing at James's jokes. James, for his part, always seemed proud to support her. People who spotted them at parties would swear they were soulmates. Whenever Catherine needed him by her side, James was there, poised, adoring, and supportive. But beneath this glossy exterior, hidden from the watchful eyes of Chicago's elite, was a truth that threatened to tear them apart. James had a mistress, Lucy Cromwell. She wasn't just a passing fling, nor a random woman he'd encountered by chance. Lucy was someone he'd known for years, someone who had once occupied a marginally professional role in his life, an assistant at Burbank and Langley who had turned into a close confidant and then, eventually, into much more. Lucy was nothing like Catherine, which was perhaps the draw. Where Catherine was reserved, Lucy was bold. Where Catherine was cultured and refined, Lucy reveled in spontaneity. They began with late-night brainstorming sessions for a pitch at the firm. Then came the after-work drinks, the laughter at inside jokes no one else understood, the flirty texts, and eventually secret rendezvous in dimly lit wine bars that dotted the fringes of the city. No one ever questioned James because he had never given them a reason to doubt him. But Lucy, who thought she could handle being the other woman, slowly felt a growing restlessness. She wanted more. She wanted, in truth, everything Catherine had. She longed for the public recognition, the ring, the holidays spent with the Caldwell family. The clandestine nature of their love was beginning to suffocate her, forcing her to wonder how long she could endure living in the shadows. And so Lucy devised a plan. She would ask James to meet her, all dressed up, at a charming out-of-the-way restaurant where they could have a serious talk. She needed to lay down her desires. If he truly loved her, he needed to make a choice. She was tired of being second, tired of stolen moments, tired of living a life built on lies. Fate, however, had other plans. Because the person who showed up that evening was not James, it was Catherine, elegantly dressed, heartbreak burning behind her eyes. In that single moment, a tapestry of deception began to unravel. A week before the disastrous rendezvous, Lucy found herself pacing the halls of her modest apartment in Wicker Park. She was uncertain about how she wanted to approach James. Text message was too impersonal. Calling him was too simple. She settled on an artful, suggestive text anyway, typed quickly, then stared at the words. James, I want to see you. Let's meet at Rosalind's on Friday, 8 p.m. Dress nice. I have something important to tell you. Lucy, her heart thumped as she hit send. She half expected James to reply immediately, but she received only a succinct message hours later. Friday, 8 p.m. at Rosalind's. I'll be there. Jay, the days leading up to Friday were a haze of indecision, excitement, and anxiety. Lucy's mind spun with all the possible outcomes. What if James refused to leave Catherine? What if he promised Lucy the world but never actually delivered? Or, far more terrifying, what if Catherine discovered their affair? Catherine, for her part, had started to notice her husband's odd behavior weeks before. His phone would buzz late at night with silent notifications. Occasionally, James would glance at the screen, turn it face down, and say it was work. Catherine, intuitive by nature, became suspicious. The final straw came one evening when James, lost in thought, responded to a question. Catherine asked him in a tone that suggested he was talking to Lucy. He called Catherine loose. Catherine was no fool. She had seen affairs rip apart the marriages of people in her circle. She had always believed that if James were ever unfaithful, she would know. So she did what she had to do. She went quietly through his phone when he was in the shower one morning. It was there she discovered Lucy's text, the one inviting James to Rosalind's. Catherine felt her heart lurch into her throat. She read and reread Lucy's message, her vision swimming with tears. Anger and betrayal cut through her like knives. Yet, the part of her that remained calm insisted she needed proof, irrefutable evidence, that James was truly involved in an affair. Over the next couple of days, Catherine acted like everything was normal. She played the role of the adoring wife flawlessly, even complimenting James on his tie the morning before the meeting. She wanted him to suspect nothing. If Lucy was planning a confrontation, Catherine needed to be one step ahead. That Friday evening, James left home wearing a tailored navy suit that Catherine had gifted him the previous Christmas. Catherine pretended not to notice that he was checking his reflection more than usual. He gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before heading out. She watched him drive away, heart pounding. Then, within 10 minutes, she set out herself. At Rosalind's, the staff welcomed James to the reservation under Lucy's name. The hostess led him to a corner booth with low amber lighting, the perfect setting for secrecy. James ordered a bourbon neat, his nerves tingling. He was unaware that Catherine was on her way, and even less aware that Lucy was about to face a betrayal of her own making. Lucy was not at the restaurant at 8:00 p.m. In fact, Lucy had been running late thanks to last-minute doubts that made her linger in front of her bedroom mirror. She wore a sleek, figure-hugging black dress that left just enough to the imagination. She had carefully applied a deep red lipstick, matching the inner fire she felt. Tonight, she intended to make a statement and an ultimatum. At 8:15, Lucy parked outside Rosalind's. The sky was painted in shades of dark blue and faint orange from the receding sunset. She could see James through the window, already seated, swirling his drink, her heart fluttered with a wild mix of nerves and determination. She inhaled sharply, summoning her courage, and stepped out of the car. But Lucy was not the only one in the parking lot. Catherine had arrived much earlier, having followed James. She waited until Lucy stepped inside the warm glow of the restaurant, then Catherine quietly slipped in behind her, the door shutting softly. James, expecting Lucy, looked up, but the figure walking toward his table was Catherine, elegantly dressed in a simple yet refined black coat over a cocktail dress. He felt his pulse spike. His mind raced with excuses, half-formed apologies, and a nauseous dread of what Catherine already knew. "James," Catherine said calmly. She slid into the booth across from him before he could stand. Her voice trembled slightly, but her expression was stone. Expecting someone else? Lucy stood at the entrance, wide-eyed. She watched Catherine sit across from James, her every worst fear coming to life in a blink. Shock, fear, anger, and heartbreak all collided within her as she realized Catherine had discovered them. How much did she know? Lucy wondered. James's eyes flicked around, trying to spot Lucy, but Catherine's presence commanded him, pinned him to his seat. The hush of the restaurant around them felt deafening. Other diners, locked in their own conversations, were blissfully unaware of the emotional earthquake transpiring in that corner booth. "What are you doing here?" James managed to say, his voice shaky. Catherine reached out and picked up James's bourbon, took a sip like she owned it. "Why don't you tell me what I'm doing here, James?" she countered, her gaze never leaving his. "Or shall I ask Lucy?" Lucy, who hovered a few steps away, felt Catherine's words pierce her like shards of glass. This was the moment she had dreaded, and, in a warped sense, the moment she had inadvertently orchestrated. She forced herself to approach the booth, her face pale. I was just, Lucy's voice wavered. She realized she had nothing to say that could salvage this. She'd intended to meet James in private, but now Catherine was here, unveiling the truth in a more public fashion than Lucy had ever anticipated. James closed his eyes, a dull roar building in his ears. He was trapped in the worst scenario imaginable. He turned to Lucy, voice panicked. "Lucy, maybe we should talk about this later. Talk about it now," Catherine interjected, her tone firmer. "Both of you, right now." They left Rosalind's after a few tense minutes, Catherine insisting they relocate somewhere more private. Lucy almost fled, but some part of her wanted closure or retribution. She wasn't sure. She followed James and Catherine, with Catherine in the lead, to a small park nestled behind the restaurant, its wrought iron gates offering a quiet refuge of trees and stone pathways. The night air was cool, the distant hum of traffic from the main street lending the scene a strange sense of normalcy. In the half-lit gloom, Catherine turned to face them both. "You can start by telling me how long," she said, her arms crossed. Anger danced behind her eyes, but heartbreak flickered there too. James swallowed hard. "Catherine, Lucy interrupted, tears slipping down her cheeks. 2 years, she said softly. Off and on for 2 years. Catherine's composure broke for a split second, her face crumpling as if struck. 2 years. That was not some brief affair or a one-night stand. This was a relationship, complete with emotional ties, shared secrets, and ongoing deceptions. She stepped back, her heels clacking on the pavement. "Catherine," James began again, stepping closer to her, "I never planned for any of this to happen. It started as Lucy was just someone I confided in at work. We grew closer. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did," Catherine replied, biting back tears. "You let it." Lucy struggled to steady her breathing. She'd imagined confronting James, but not like this. She'd never wanted to cause Catherine this kind of pain, not really. But the reality was, she had, and it was excruciating for all involved. Catherine looked at Lucy, her voice low. "And what about you? Did you think he would leave me?" Lucy's lips trembled, but she spoke with a quiet desperation. "He told me he might, that he wasn't happy, that things at home were difficult. Yes, I believed him, because I love him." A harsh laugh tore from Catherine's throat. "You love him? And what about me? Did it ever cross your mind how you might be tearing apart my life?" Lucy's eyes filled again, but she felt a surge of indignation. "Do you think it was easy being the other woman? Waiting for a phone call, a text message, always hiding, always the secret. I never wanted to be that woman, Catherine." James, feeling the sting of guilt, hung his head. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him like a mountain. He reached for Catherine's hand, but she pulled away. She wasn't ready to be consoled by the man who had shattered her heart. A silent tear carved a path down Catherine's cheek. "I need answers. Did you ever think about me while you were sneaking around with her? Did you even consider what it would do to us if I found out?" James couldn't meet her eyes. "Every day, Catherine," he whispered. "I felt guilty every day. But Lucy gave me something I was missing. Excitement, passion. I don't even know how to explain it. It just happened." Those words, "it just happened," made Catherine's heartbreak twist into anger. "Nothing just happens, James. You made a conscious choice every single time you saw her. The park lights cast flickering shadows over them. None of them knew how to proceed." Lucy, shaking, held her elbows as if trying to keep herself from falling apart. Catherine stood rigid, fury and sorrow warring across her face. And James realized in that moment that no matter what, he was about to lose something, maybe everything. In the weeks that followed, the story of how they had gotten here became clearer to Catherine. Piece by painful piece, she learned about the nights James had lied, saying he was working late at the office, when in reality he was taking Lucy to secret dinners in River North. She learned that Lucy had come to him first, seeking mentorship, which had snowballed into a friendship and then into an affair. She found receipts for expensive gifts, bracelets, earrings that James had purchased for Lucy, items Catherine had never laid eyes on. Confronted with the evidence, James finally sat down with Catherine at their dining table, the same table that had once hosted holiday feasts and candlelit dinners celebrating anniversaries. Catherine couldn't bring herself to look at him for more than a few seconds at a time. The betrayal felt too raw. "I don't know if I can do this," Catherine said, tears threatening to spill. "You've lied to me for 2 years. How can I trust you?" James looked hollow, as though he hadn't slept in weeks. "I know, and I'm sorry. Catherine, you have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you." Catherine let out a bitter laugh. "What did you think would happen, James? Did you expect me to roll over and let you have your mistress while we pretend to be happy?" He shook his head. "No, Lucy kept asking me to choose. I kept stalling. Because the truth is, I love you, Catherine. But I got addicted to the thrill, I guess. I was bored. That's not a justification. It's just the truth." Hurt coated Catherine's every breath. "You were bored, so you decided to tear our marriage apart for some excitement? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" James reached out to take her hand, but she pulled away, wiping a tear that had streaked down her cheek. She glanced at the wedding photo that hung on the living room wall. In it, they stood by the planetarium's glass windows, the Chicago skyline behind them, all smiles and promise. She wondered if that day had been a lie too, or if somewhere along the line, James had simply lost sight of what they once were. At the same time, Lucy sat alone in her Wicker Park apartment, replaying every moment of the fiasco at Rosalind's. She felt a toxic blend of shame, heartbreak, and anger. She had never wished to be a villain in someone else's life story, but as the affair dragged on, she found herself cast in precisely that role. All she had wanted was for James to truly choose her, to demonstrate in action, not just words, that he was willing to leave Catherine. She tossed her phone aside, tears brimming. She felt used, confused about her own culpability. She'd known James was married when things first turned romantic. But the heart can be stubborn, ignoring moral lines once desire and love are in the mix. A single question haunted her. Would James leave Catherine now? The next day, Lucy messaged him, demanding answers. "We need to talk. Now that it's all out in the open, we can finally be together, right? You told me you loved me. So show me." It took hours for James to respond. When he finally called her, his voice was fatigued and distant. He explained that Catherine was devastated, that he needed time to figure out what to do. He said he was torn between guilt and the lingering love he still held for Lucy. Lucy felt her stomach churn. She had laid her heart bare. "I can't believe, after all this, you're still hesitating. I thought you'd be with me the moment Catherine found out. I thought that was the whole point." James's silence spoke volumes. He was not prepared to walk away from his marriage, not just yet. Lucy ended the call in tears, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. She was no longer sure which was worse, being hidden or being left in limbo. Desperate for counsel, Catherine visited her childhood friend, Mary Donovan, a no-nonsense attorney who had seen her fair share of marital strife. They met at Mary's apartment, a chic but cozy space perched on the 24th floor, overlooking Lake Michigan. The two women sat on a plush couch, glasses of wine in hand. "I don't know if I want a divorce," Catherine said, voice trembling. "A part of me hates him, wants to burn everything to the ground. But another part." She trailed off, unable to voice her lingering attachment. James had been a cornerstone of her life for nearly a decade. Mary frowned. "Catherine, you have to make a decision that's right for you. If you want to try counseling, you can. But if you can't trust him anymore, divorce might be the only option." A short silence. Catherine sipped her wine, tears threatening to rise. "I don't want to give up on this marriage just because Lucy came along and offered him some thrills. But I can't live wondering if he's secretly with her." Mary placed a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. "You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be hurt. But the worst thing you can do is blame yourself or make a decision in haste. Give yourself time. Insist that James cut off contact with Lucy if he wants a chance at reconciliation. That's bare minimum." Catherine nodded slowly. She felt numb, but Mary's practical advice gave her a sense of direction. She left that evening, determined to confront James with a list of non-negotiable conditions if their marriage was to stand a chance. James returned home late after receiving Catherine's text that she needed to talk, really talk. He entered the living room to find Catherine sitting on the sofa, posture rigid, eyes set with resolve. He felt his heart sink. He sensed this would be a make-or-break conversation. "I have some conditions," Catherine began, voice quiet but firm. "If you want this marriage to survive, I need you to agree to them, all of them." James nodded slowly, sinking into an armchair across from her. "Okay, let's hear them." She lifted her chin, speaking clearly. 1. You must sever all contact with Lucy. No phone calls, no texts, no personal conversations. If work requires interaction, it goes through HR or another intermediary. His jaw tightened. "I, too," she continued, not allowing him to interrupt. "You come to marriage counseling with me. I've found a therapist who specializes in infidelity issues. We see them weekly, no exceptions." James stared at the floor, guilt weighing him down, but he nodded. "I understand." 3. You tell me everything. No more secrets. If I ask about a detail of your affair, you answer honestly. No half-truths. He hesitated, the shame of it burning in his gut. But he knew this was the only path forward if he wanted to preserve any semblance of a future with Catherine. "You have my word," he whispered. Catherine observed him carefully. "You were unfaithful for 2 years, James. That's a long time to lie. I need to see you actively choosing me every day. No more excuses, no more runarounds." He leaned forward, tears in his eyes. "I choose you, Catherine. I'm so sorry. I don't want to lose you." She stiffened, letting his words sink in. "Then show me," she replied, her tone taut with lingering pain. "Actions, not words." Lucy was not privy to the conversation in Catherine's living room. All she knew was that James had gone silent for days, which raised her alarm. In a final bid for answers, Lucy decided to confront James one last time at his office, if necessary. On a cold Tuesday morning, Lucy arrived at Burbank and Langley, her nerves rattling. She stepped into the sleek lobby, ignoring the confused looks of the receptionist. Anxiety churned in her stomach. She didn't even know if James was in, but she had to try. She spotted him in a glass-walled conference room, huddled with co-workers. She waited in the corridor until the meeting ended. When James emerged, briefly alone, she approached. "Lucy," he began, shifting uncomfortably. "You shouldn't be here." "James, the first need to know what's happening," she said, voice trembling. "Have you decided? Are you leaving her?" He exhaled heavily, glancing around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. "Lucy, I'm ending this. I told Catherine everything. We're going to try to salvage our marriage. I can't continue to hurt her." Lucy reeled as if slapped. She had expected to hear him waver, to see him torn, to maybe lie. But the finality in his eyes told her all she needed to know. Her fury and heartbreak collided in a flash of raw emotion. "After everything I gave you," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "after all your promises, you just walk away, without even telling me face to face?" James's eyes flicked with guilt. "I'm sorry. I didn't want it to end like this." Lucy shook her head, tears burning. "But it has." She forced a bitter laugh. "I hope you realize what you're throwing away. I loved you, James. I believed we had a future." He looked torn, guilt saturating every line of his face. "I did love you. In a way, I still do. But I made vows to Catherine and I broke them. If there's a chance for me to fix that, I have to try." Lucy felt a wave of despair wash over her. In one moment, her life's precariously balanced plan was undone. She'd never hated Catherine, not really. She hated the circumstances that made her the other woman. But she couldn't stand here any longer, listening to James do the one thing she never truly believed. He'd pick his wife over her. She turned to leave, but paused, looking back at him with glistening eyes. "I hope you can live with yourself, James. You used me. You tore my heart apart. One day, you'll face the consequences of that." Then she walked away, each step echoing with a finality that left James breathless. With Lucy gone from his life, James focused on the tenuous bridge he was trying to rebuild with Catherine. They attended therapy sessions with Dr. Hannah Elliott, a seasoned psychologist who had guided many couples through the rocky aftermath of infidelity. In their first session, Catherine barely spoke. James, on the other hand, poured out guilt and remorse. But Dr. Elliott made it clear that acknowledging remorse was only the beginning. Real work came from understanding why he strayed and finding ways to earn Catherine's trust again. Days stretched into weeks. Catherine felt the wound of betrayal begin to scab over, but it was still fragile. The holidays loomed, a time when family gatherings abounded. She wasn't sure how to face them with this secret roiling beneath the surface. Her mother, Helena Monroe, was keen-eyed and had already noticed tension between James and Catherine. Catherine dreaded revealing her heartbreak to her parents, but Mary reminded her that a strong support system might help her navigate the emotional labyrinth. So Catherine told her parents the truth. James had been unfaithful. Shocked and outraged, Helena demanded Catherine stay with them while she sorted things out, but Catherine decided to remain in her own home. James tried to be the husband he should have been all along. He would text Catherine throughout the day, asking how she was, if she needed anything. He brought her flowers on random afternoons. He listened more attentively, trying to be empathetic whenever she opened up about her pain. Sometimes she responded with warmth, moved by his efforts. Other times she lashed out with anger she could no longer contain, reminding him of every lie he'd told. And so, they existed in a state of watchful uncertainty. The reality was harsh. An affair that spanned 2 years does not vanish in a matter of weeks. Catherine's forgiveness did not come simply, nor did James's feelings for Lucy disappear overnight. Every so often, he caught himself missing Lucy's carefree laughter or the spark of excitement he felt when he was with her. He hated himself for it, seeing it as a betrayal to Catherine all over again, but it was an emotional residue. He couldn't just switch off. Lucy, meanwhile, tried to move on with her life. She resigned from Burbank and Langley to avoid seeing James at all. She found a new job as an account manager at a smaller firm in the suburbs. Despite her attempt at a fresh start, the heartbreak lingered. She had pinned all her hopes on James Caldwell, and the fallout left her with a fractured sense of self-worth. One cold evening, Lucy found herself rummaging through a box of keepsakes, tiny tokens. James had given her photos of them on a business trip they'd turned into a clandestine getaway. She debated burning them, thinking it might be cathartic, but something held her back, the final tethers of a hope she couldn't quite extinguish. She set the box aside, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. Catherine, for her part, was haunted by images of Lucy. She had glimpsed Lucy briefly that fateful night at Rosalind's, and in the park confrontation. Catherine's friends and acquaintances whispered about the affair, although no one dared approach her directly. The rumor mill buzzed in the background. She felt a rising sense of rage and insecurity. Was Lucy more beautiful? More exciting? She struggled to keep those thoughts at bay, but they tore at her confidence. James tried to reassure her constantly. It wasn't about Lucy being better than you. It was about me. I was in a place where I craved something else. It was my weakness, my selfishness. Catherine wondered if that was supposed to comfort her. She told Dr. Elliot one session. Every time James tries to explain, he says it's about him, not me. But that only makes me wonder how long until he needs that something else again. How can I ever feel safe, Doctor? Elliot nodded sympathetically. These are valid feelings. Remember, rebuilding trust isn't a straight line. It's a process. What do you need from James right now to feel safer? Catherine thought for a moment. Consistency, transparency, and for him to understand that my love isn't unconditional anymore. If he fails me again, it's over. I won't survive another betrayal. As Catherine waded through the complexities of therapy and heartbreak, a new twist came unexpectedly from a mutual friend, Claire Linden. Claire was an old acquaintance who had known James and Catherine for years. One afternoon, Claire invited Catherine to lunch under the pretense of discussing a charitable fundraiser. Instead, Claire revealed something that turned Catherine's stomach. She had overheard Lucy telling another co-worker about her intention to contact James again. She was talking about closure, Claire explained, her voice laced with concern. But it sounded more like she was hoping to rekindle things. Catherine felt her nerves flare with alarm. Lucy promised James she wouldn't contact him again. He said he cut her off. Claire shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. I just thought you should know. I don't want to see you blindsided again. That evening, Catherine confronted James about Lucy's alleged plan. He appeared genuinely baffled. I haven't heard from her. I blocked her number. There's been nothing. A tension-laden silence stretched between them. Catherine studied James's face, searching for any flicker of deceit. But he looked earnest. Tentatively, she believed him. Yet the knowledge that Lucy might attempt to re-enter James's life unsettled Catherine deeply. She was trying so hard to rebuild trust, but the spectre of Lucy kept haunting them like a malevolent force. At times, Catherine wondered if she should leave to preserve her own sanity. But a stubborn part of her wanted to fight for her marriage, to prove that Lucy wouldn't steal everything she had built. As fate would have it, Catherine and Lucy ended up under the same roof again, this time at a high-profile charity gala downtown. Catherine had helped organize the event, hoping to raise funds for a new community art initiative. Lucy, connected through her new job, attended as part of her firm's corporate sponsorship table. When Catherine arrived, wearing a stunning midnight blue gown, she initially had no idea Lucy was present. Her focus was on ensuring the silent auction ran smoothly, the VIP donors felt welcomed, and that the event surpassed its fundraising goal. But the moment Lucy spotted Catherine, she felt her pulse kick into overdrive. Lucy was dressed in a simpler black cocktail dress, her hair styled elegantly. Although she felt a pang of guilt and apprehension, something about seeing Catherine ignited a surge of defiance within her. Catherine had won, but Lucy still felt like she needed her own closure. Midway through the evening, Lucy mustered her courage and approached Catherine, who was momentarily alone near the silent auction table. The tension was palpable. Catherine straightened when she saw Lucy, her gaze fierce. "Catherine," Lucy began quietly, "I didn't mean to disrupt your event. Catherine cut her off, her voice cold. "What do you want, Lucy?" Lucy hesitated, then pressed on. "I just wanted you to know I'm not trying to ruin your marriage anymore. I realize now James chose you. I won't contact him again." A brittle laugh escaped Catherine. "Do you expect a thank you? You're the one who intruded on my marriage for 2 years. You did enough damage." Lucy fought back tears. "I understand you hate me, but I never meant to hurt you. I honestly believed James and I had a future. I was naive. I'm sorry." Catherine's eyes blazed with suppressed fury. "Naive isn't the word. You knew exactly what you were doing, Lucy. You took something that wasn't yours and pretended you had a right to it. You turned my life upside down." Lucy swallowed hard, her shoulders slumping. "I know, and I'm trying to atone for that by leaving you both alone." She paused, voice trembling. "Believe it or not, I wish you well. I loved him, but I lost. I'm trying to move on." A storm of emotions raged in Catherine. Part of her wanted to slap Lucy, unleash every ounce of anger boiling in her veins. Another part recognized Lucy's remorse. If Lucy was truly leaving James alone, that might be Catherine's best chance at peace. She gave a curt nod. "Then keep moving on. Don't ever try to contact him again." Lucy nodded, tears in her eyes, and quietly walked away. Catherine stood there, breath quivering. She felt tears threaten to well up, but she forced them down. She had the rest of a gala to oversee, donors to thank. She straightened her posture and plastered on a polite smile. As a few guests walked by, unaware of the emotional showdown that had just occurred. In the following weeks, Catherine and James's life settled into a new rhythm. Therapy continued, offering them a space to express repressed pain and anger. Slowly, Catherine found she could look at James without seething, even though the ache of betrayal lingered. James, for his part, practiced relentless honesty. Even in small matters, he shared details of his day, phone calls, messages, and anything Catherine asked to see. It was his way of proving he had nothing more to hide. On one chilly Saturday morning, they took a walk along Lake Michigan's shore. Catherine tucked her hands into her coat pockets, trying to ignore the sting of the icy wind. James walked beside her, unsure if reaching for her hand would be welcome. Finally, he summoned his courage and gently took her gloved hand in his. Catherine didn't pull away. They walked in silence for a while. When they reached a bench, Catherine sat, gazing at the lapping waves. "I never thought we'd get here," she said quietly. "A moment of calm after everything." James nodded, his eyes brimming with remorse. "I'm beyond grateful you gave me a second chance. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve it." She eyed him, trying to read the sincerity in his face. "There are days I think you don't deserve it either, but the alternative to walk away from all we've built, maybe it was fear, maybe it was love, but I chose to try again." He swallowed thickly, tears threatening. "I'll never forget this. I'll never hurt you like that again, Catherine. I promise." Catherine listened, letting his words sink in. Whether or not she could fully trust them remained to be seen. But they sat there, hand in hand, forging a tentative new chapter in their story. Months passed. The shock of the affair began to subside, replaced by a gradual, sometimes halting, path toward healing. James and Catherine's marriage was not magically restored. It was a work in progress. They had setbacks, arguments triggered by a stray reminder of Lucy. Sometimes Catherine would catch James momentarily lost in thought and wonder if he was thinking about Lucy. But each time, James offered reassurance, apologizing again and validating Catherine's insecurities. In therapy, they explored the underlying issues that had led James astray: his dissatisfaction, the breakdown of communication in their marriage, and his own inability to address boredom without seeking outside thrills. Catherine also faced her own part in the marriage's complacency, recognizing that she had sometimes prioritized her philanthropic pursuits over nurturing their emotional intimacy. It was a hard pill to swallow, but acknowledging it allowed them to address the rift. Lucy remained out of sight, presumably moving forward with her life. Word on the grapevine was that she had started dating someone new from her new job, a fact that, strangely enough, brought Catherine a sense of relief. The threat of Lucy's lingering presence no longer loomed as large, yet for all the steps forward, Catherine would occasionally dream of the night she found out. She'd wake in a cold sweat, the memory of James and Lucy's affair slicing through her heart. In those moments, James would hold her, whispering apologies and reassurances into her hair. Over time, these nightmares became less frequent, though not entirely gone. Just when Catherine thought she was regaining her footing, an unexpected phone call rattled her world yet again. It was from Lucy. Catherine stared at the phone in disbelief before answering. On the other line, Lucy's voice sounded subdued. "I'm sorry for calling you, Catherine. I know you told me not to, but I didn't know what else to do." Catherine's pulse raced. "Is there some emergency?" Lucy hesitated. "I found out something that affects James, and I don't know how to handle it. It's about me, but he deserves to know." Alarm bells rang in Catherine's head. She wanted to hang up, to sever any contact with Lucy once and for all. But curiosity got the better of her. "What is it?" Lucy let out a shaky breath. "I'm pregnant, and I'm pretty sure it's James's." Catherine felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. "You what?" Lucy's words tumbled out in a rush. "I swear I didn't plan this. I only found out a couple of days ago. I've been seeing someone else. But the timing, it's more likely James's baby. I haven't told him because I know how complicated this is." Rage, betrayal, panic soared inside Catherine. "How far along are you?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "About 3 months," Lucy answered softly. "I wouldn't have called you if it wasn't important. But he has a right to know, Catherine. And you do too." Catherine couldn't breathe. James's affair might have resulted in a child. Everything she and James had been painstakingly repairing could come crashing down. She stammered, I need to process this." Lucy's tone was earnest, even apologetic. "Take your time. I know it's a lot. But I can't keep it a secret. I'm going to need—" She broke off. "I'm sorry, Catherine." Catherine hung up without another word, her hands shaking violently. The next few minutes blurred as she tried to make sense of what she had just heard. James had impregnated Lucy, the ultimate betrayal, continuing to haunt her life, even after Lucy was supposedly gone. That evening, James returned from work to find Catherine pale and trembling in the living room. She confronted him immediately, voice cold. "Lucy's pregnant. She says it might be yours," Catherine spat. "Is it true?" James's face went white. "Pregnant?" He sank onto the couch, his eyes darting in disbelief. "She never told me. Catherine, I don't know. It could be mine. We weren't always careful." Catherine felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "How could you do this to me?" She sank into a chair, pressing her palm to her forehead. "If this is your child, then what?" He swallowed hard. "I need time to think. I know I can't run away from my responsibilities. If it is mine, I'll do what I have to do." "But Catherine, that doesn't mean what?" Catherine snapped. "Doesn't mean you'll be a father to a child you conceived with your mistress. I'm not sure how you expect me to handle that. He leaned forward, his voice trembling. I don't want to lose you. But I can't abandon a child if it's mine. She bit back a sob, the reality crashing down on her. All the progress they had made over the past few months barged in upon by the unplanned consequence of James's affair. She wondered if it was a sign that they were never meant to mend things, that the seeds of betrayal would always sprout new thorns. The next few weeks were a blur of tension and heartbreak. James contacted Lucy, who confirmed she was pregnant. They arranged for a paternity test once Lucy reached a stage where it would be safe to conduct a non-invasive procedure. Catherine vacillated between wanting to salvage her marriage and feeling like fate was mocking her for trying. In therapy, Dr. Elliot guided them through the maze of emotions. Catherine alternated between rage and heartbreak. James was racked with guilt, forced to consider what it would mean to co-parent with Lucy or pay child support if the DNA test confirmed paternity. Meanwhile, Lucy was caught between fear and a reluctant acceptance of her new reality. She had been prepared for a life without James, but now she might be bound to him forever by this child. A swirl of questions plagued her. Should she raise the baby alone? Should she expect James to be present? And how could she ever find a healthy relationship when her life was so entwined in the drama of her affair? Finally, the test results came in. James was the father. Lucy's firm called James to confirm. Then Lucy, tearful, relayed the news as well. James felt as though the ground was splitting beneath him. Catherine stared at him in silence when he delivered the confirmation. She swallowed hard, tears glistening in her eyes. What do we do now? She asked, her voice cracking. Do you plan on co-parenting with her? Will the baby be part of our lives? James felt a wave of nausea. I can't just ignore my own child, but I know this changes everything. A bitter laugh left Catherine's lips. You're right, everything is changed, everything. Facing what felt like an insurmountable challenge, Catherine retreated into herself. She spent days at her parents' estate, pondering her future. The child James fathered with Lucy would be a permanent reminder of the affair. Catherine wondered if she could handle that. She questioned whether to end the marriage. During a tearful talk with Mary Donovan, Catherine confessed her deepest dread. Every time I look at that child, I'll see Lucy. I'll see the 2 years James lied to me. How can I ever move on? Mary's face was sympathetic. This is something you have to decide on your own, Catherine. No one would blame you for walking away. But if you truly believe James is remorseful, if you really think there's a chance for a future, you'll have to accept that child as part of his life, and eventually, yours. Catherine felt her heart clench. She had longed for a child with James, though the timing had never felt right. Now Lucy was carrying his child. Could she endure that heartbreak? James called every day, leaving voicemails that Catherine sometimes ignored, sometimes answered with sobs or furious accusations. He pleaded with her, telling her he loved her, that he wanted to make it work, but the baby complicated everything. Even Dr. Elliot acknowledged that this was a turning point that could either unify them through extraordinary compassion or sever them completely. Eventually, Catherine returned home to talk with James. They sat across from each other at the dining table, the ghost of their past happiness thick in the air. Catherine looked exhausted, yet resolved. James, she began quietly, I can't pretend this child doesn't exist, and I can't pretend it won't affect us. So here's my decision. If you want this marriage, if you truly want me, I need to know you're all in. You'll be there for this child, but you'll also respect my boundaries. We'll figure out co-parenting or visitation or whatever arrangement is needed. But Lucy cannot be a daily presence in our lives. He stared at her, relief and wariness mingling. I'll do anything to keep you, Catherine. Anything. She nodded slowly, tears welling. Then we move forward with honesty. You have to be transparent about every interaction with Lucy regarding the child. We continue therapy, and if I ever suspect you of lying again, it's over. James crossed to her, took her hands gently. I understand. I want to be with you, and I will care for my child. But you're my wife, the woman I love. Catherine blinked back tears. A swirl of conflicting emotions flooded her: love, sorrow, hope, and dread of the challenges to come. But she knew that, for now, she was choosing to stay. Over the following months, Catherine and James confronted their new reality. Lucy gave birth to a baby girl named Audrey. James visited the hospital, meeting his daughter with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes. Lucy, exhausted, yet glowing with maternal pride, offered him a tentative smile, an unspoken understanding passing between them. This child was innocent, yet born from a tangle of deception and heartbreak. Catherine didn't attend the hospital, choosing to preserve her emotional well-being. But she allowed James to bring photos home, gave him space to express the wonder and fear of fatherhood, and tried not to flinch when she glimpsed Lucy's face in the background of the pictures. Weeks turned into months, and Catherine found herself occasionally in the baby's presence for short visits, for events that Lucy requested James attend. Catherine remained guarded but tried to see Audrey as separate from the betrayal. She noted the baby's tiny fingers, her warm eyes that reflected James's shape. It was painful, but Catherine was determined not to transfer her anger toward the innocent child. Gradually, heartbreak gave way to a nuanced acceptance. James, for his part, committed to therapy and sincere contrition. He took fatherhood seriously, contributing financially, visiting regularly, but also adhering to the boundaries Catherine set. Lucy seemed genuinely focused on raising her daughter, no longer interested in rekindling the affair. She sought her own happiness elsewhere, seeking a stable environment for Audrey. The journey was far from over, but for the moment, Catherine and James had found a delicate equilibrium, living proof that while betrayal can shred the fabric of a marriage, love, persistence, and a willingness to face the truth might stitch it back together in unexpected ways. At its core, this story isn't just about a scandalous affair. It's about the staggering power of love, the weight of betrayal, and the tenacity required to rebuild after shattering revelations. Catherine chose a path of guarded forgiveness, forging a new life scarred but not entirely broken. James, confronted by the consequences of his actions, embraced accountability in a final bid to save his marriage, grappling with the complexities of fatherhood beyond the confines of his vows. And Lucy, once the other woman, stepped into a challenging future shaped by her own choices, determined to provide for her daughter without lingering in the shadows. If this gripping tale of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption resonated with you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you'll help us continue sharing powerful stories that shed light on the human condition and, hopefully, inspire hope amid life's darkest moments.